So I've been really into music lately. Don't know if any of y'all can relate, but that does mean I listened to 64 different albums in the past year, and I'm going to do a bracket of which album is the best album of all time. This is like crazy opinionated and obviously differs from person to person. And I got this list from Hivemind, love Hivemind, shout out, where they did the fans' 64 favorite albums bracket, and I decided I hadn't listened to like a decent number of these, so I wanted to go through the entire list, and I'm going to decide, in my opinion, what the best album of all time is. Now, most of my like top 5 top favorite albums are in this list, so I'm gonna be I feel like coming to this I had a pretty good idea of what's going to win, but we're gonna look through each matchup, we're gonna figure out what's best, and I'm gonna lead the bracket for y'all to decide what your favorite album is, because I know everyone has their own opinion, everyone wants to argue on this topic, and I think it's fun to argue about music, so that's exactly what I'm going to do today. So shout out Hivemind for the video idea. This has been a long video in the making. I started this almost a year ago. If you do enjoy the video, leave a like, comment what your favorite albums is, comment how bad you think my opinions are, and let's just get into it. If you're wondering, the background is Hivemind, Riley, and Blade. I didn't realize it was going to do that because I just like picked that from my camera roll when I was making it, and I was like, sure, it's not going to use it, and then I put it as the background. So either ignore or enjoy, whichever one you prefer to do. And starting off strong with our first matchup, this is a crazy one. We have To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar and Ever Since by Blade. If you know me, you know I love Blade, and this is my favorite Blade album. And then we have arguably a lot of people's like favorite album of all time. Objectively, To Pimp a Butterfly is the better album here, but I love Ever Since. I think we've got to knock out one of my favorites pretty early, so we're taking To Pimp a Butterfly here. I'm sorry, Blade. This is not the last we're going to see of you, I'm sure of that. Next up is Faces by Mac Miller versus Channel Orange by Frank Ocean. Faces is not my favorite Mac Miller album, and neither is Channel Orange. They both have their merits, but they're both like kind of mid picks for me. Channel Orange has been there for me for quite a long time, and I think I have more associations attached to it. I've been, obsessed with more songs from the track list, so I'm going Channel Orange here. Next up is Twin Fantasy by Car Seat Headrest versus All My Heroes Are Cornballs by JPEG Mafia. Okay, this is a clear winner for me. On my album of the year profile, this is my top album of all time. It's Twin Fantasy. I love the Mirror to Mirror version. I think that Beach Life and Death is easily one of my top 10 favorite songs of all time, and a lot of the others on here are incredible. And All My Heroes Are Cornballs is great. There's a lot of banger tracks on this, but it just doesn't live up to the emotional connection that I have to Twin Fantasy. Early spoiler, this one's going quite a long way, but we'll see what happens. Ooh, okay, we got Rodeo by Travis Scott versus After Hours by The Weeknd. Rodeo was a sneak pick for me. I finally listened and I was like, ooh, there's like 90210, insane. However, After Hours is just as equally insane, I think. I love After Hours. Like, even the overplayed radio songs, Blinding Lights is so good, man. I'm sorry, Rodeo, but we are going with The Weeknd here. Next up, we have Care For Me by Saba versus Nurture by Porter Robinson. This one is a clear matchup for me. I don't know anything about Saba. I'm so sorry, but I had not heard of this album until I did the bracket and I listened, and it was pretty good. But at the same time, Nurture is also one of my favorite albums of all time. It's so special. It's so important to me as a person. I've cried to Nurture on an airplane, and I can't say the same for Care For Me. We are going with Nurture for this one. This is a big matchup. We have Graduation by Kanye West versus Kid A by Radiohead. Now, Kid A is not my favorite of the big 3 Radiohead albums. And then we have Graduation, which has a lot of bangers. Coming into this bracket, I had not listened to a single Kanye album in full. I obviously now get his merit as an artist. I do think Kid A is one that I've spent way much more time with. That's kind of the theme of this video, is which album have I spent more time with, which album have I cried to in my bedroom in the middle of the night. Can't say I really connect with either of these albums a whole lot, but I personally think that Kid A is the better album. This matchup, we have Hypochondriac by Breakins versus Discovery by Daft Punk. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I love Breakins. He's possibly my favorite artist of all time, and Daft Punk is so obviously great, but I love Breakins. And Hypochondriac, it means the world to me, to be honest. This is a tough one, because my heart is telling me to pick Hypochondriac, but I know objectively Discovery is probably the better album. I know Hypochondriac is not a lot of people's favorite albums. I know it's a little bit corny. it's not the most show-stopping thing in the world, but to me it was. When I listened to this like a year or two ago, it was the most show-stopping thing in the world to me, and I was obsessed with it, and I still am. I think I am going to follow my heart for this one, and I'm going to pick Hypochondriac. So sorry, Daft Punk, you will be missed very dearly, but you're not Breakins. We got Mad Villainy by Mad Villain, MF Doom, Madlib, and we got In the Airplane Over the Sea by Nutrimilk Hotel. I don't have like the history with both of these albums, actually. You would think I would, like, based on my music background, but these are both first listens to me in this bracket, and I've spent, a lot of time with them since. I like the storyline of In the Airplane Over the Sea. I like the thought behind it. I like how it's executed, but Mad Villainy is a really good MF Doom project, and I'm going to go with that. All right, next up, we got Blonde by Frank Ocean and The Money Store by Death Grips. I feel so bad for The Money Store because Blonde is the clear winner here. And The Money Store is great. I like Death Grips a lot, but I love Frank Ocean a lot. And Blonde is like, it is my airplane album of all time. I have to listen to this first thing when I take off, or else it is a horrible flight. And I have to like sit there listening to the silence at the end, and I'm just like, damn, I'm on an airplane right now, and I'm listening to Frank Ocean, and it's incredible. Also, fun fact, Nights is my number one favorite song, like literally of all time. Money Store has a lot of merit to bring. It's cool. It's super well produced. It's a lot of fun, but Blonde is Blonde, and it's going to win this matchup. Now we got The Melodic Blue by Baby Keem and Is This It by The Strokes. Here's where I start getting into some of my hot takes. I don't love The Melodic Blue. I like Baby Keem as a guy, as a rapper. I think he's fun. I think, a lot of his tracks I enjoy a lot. But The Melodic Blue, I think as a project, doesn't have the cohesion. Then we have Is This It by The Strokes, where I basically do love the whole thing. This isn't even my favorite album by The Strokes, but I think it does have a lot more to offer as an album than The Melodic Blue does, so that's why I'm going to pick it in this round. Next up, we have The Forever Story by JID versus Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. Now, this is a really tough matchup for me. I loved The Forever Story a lot more than I thought I would. I listened to it this year for the first time. I didn't think I was gonna love a JID album that much, but I did. At the same time, we have Loveless, and this album was huge for me in high school. There was a period in my life where I listened to this album every night before I went to sleep, and then I woke up and I listened to this album, and truly just like every day was Loveless. I'm sorry, I'm going with Loveless. I mean, I'm not sorry. I think this album is great, and the fact that I could listen to it like multiple times a day in high school shows how great it is. This matchup, we got Flower Boy by Tyler the Creator versus Control by SZA. These are two really great albums. These are two albums that are super hyped for very good reason. Flower Boy is my favorite Tyler album. I think it's a perfect album. It's summer. It has 911 Mr. Lonely. It has all of these crazy songs, but Control has a lot of great songs too that I cannot remember the name of right now. I'm acting like this is a super tough matchup for me, but it's not, because Flower Boy is a perfect album, and I don't think Control is, even though I do love it a lot. Now it's time for A Whole Lot of Red by Playboi Carti versus Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. This matchup is, there's a clear winner for me. Hot take, I don't love Whole Lot of Red as much as I was expected to. There's a lot of songs on it that I do like, but there's a lot of songs that, felt a little bit too repetitive to me. On the other hand, Songs in the Key of Life is like a 2-hour album, and I genuinely love every single song on there. I think it's perfect. I don't know how there's a 2-hour album that is perfect, but it's Stevie Wonder, and if anyone could do it, it's him. This matchup, I'm going Songs in the Key of Life. Here we go. Now it's time for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West versus Love is Rage 2 by Lil Uzi Vert. These are both towards the tail end of this project for me. I didn't spend a whole lot of time with either. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to say about this matchup, but I do think that as a project, as a cohesive body of work, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy takes it. And I think a lot of people agree. I think that's not an unpopular take. We're going with that on this matchup. All right, it's OK Computer by Radiohead versus The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. These are both like pretty foundational albums to my youth, I'd say. I have a lot of memories for both of these albums of like sitting in the car staring out the window just listening to this, and like there's not a single thought in my brain. I'm just like a sad teenager. I think that one of these is a perfect album. I'm realizing now that I'm a huge Radiohead glazer, and I have been for such a long time, but they're just that good, and I think foundational to who I am as a person. I don't want to be that guy who's like the biggest Radiohead fan ever, because I feel like that's low-key embarrassing at this point, but I'm also the guy who's the biggest Radiohead fan ever. So I think the OK Computer is another perfect album. and I think it's going to win this matchup. All right, now we have I Didn't Mean to Haunt You by Quadeca versus Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Both of these grew on me, I'd say. I had my first listen within this bracket. I was like, I think both of these are a little bit overhyped, but now I really love both of them. I think that I Didn't Mean to Haunt You is such a beautiful concept for an album. This album is crazy, and Wish You Were Here is so obviously an incredible album. I don't love prog rock that much, but I do like this album a lot. It deserves the hype it gets, but it's not a concept album about being a ghost and living with that. So I'm going to choose the album that is a concept album about being a ghost and living with that. Quadeca, you are moving on to the next round. Okay, I knew this was going to be scuffed, but I'm now doing the rest of the left half before we get into the second half of the album, so bear with me. Now we're back on To Pimp a Butterfly and Channel Orange. I like To Pimp a Butterfly a lot. I feel like it's one of the albums where I recognize its merit, but it's like at the same time I don't connect with it. And at the same time, I don't really connect with Channel Orange that much either. I think I'm such a blonde lover that this album is like, I think I just talked myself into it. I'm going to go with To Pimp a Butterfly. Next matchup is Twin Fantasy versus After Hours. I've talked about it. I'm going to keep talking about it. I love Twin Fantasy, especially Mirror to Mirror. I don't even have much to say. After Hours, You Were Good to Me. You're crazy, dark, awesome, speeding at night with my headlights on and I'm like blind. We're going with Twin Fantasy. This one digs into my soul a little bit. We have Nurture versus Kid A. See, I'm gonna keep bringing up this argument, but only one of these albums has made me cry on an airplane, and that's Nurture. Only one of these albums has Musician, which is one of, I think, the best songs of all time. But at the same time, Kid A has some of the best songs of all time too. Can I think of them right now? No, I cannot. I mean, what am I doing here? Nurture is in my top 5 favorite albums of all time. It's moving on. Oh. See, these are the matchups I wasn't prepared for. And this one is Hypochondriac versus Mad Villainy. Shit, this is hard. Because Mad Villainy is great. But I don't know that it lives up to Hypochondriac for me. I think there are other MF Doom projects that could live up to Hypochondriac. I love Madlib as a producer, but I love Breakins as a producer more. So we're going with Hypochondriac. This one, I feel like I'm gonna make people mad with this one, but I love Hypochondriac, and I'm wearing the hat. Y'all should have seen this one coming. Now we got Blonde versus Is This It? I don't know why I'm like sitting here staring at this like this is the hardest matchup of my life. It's not. Blonde takes the cake for this one. It's Blonde. The night speed switch happens at exactly 30 minutes. The album is exactly an hour long, and that's why it's so awesome, and it has this whole parallel thing where it's blonde, but it's also blonde with an E, and each song, matches up with its pairing. If it was the new Abnormal, maybe we would take it, because I love that album. Blonde is blonde, so we're gonna be blonding. Now we got Loveless versus Flower Boy. We got the ultimate winter depression album versus the ultimate summer vibes album. I like Loveless as a cohesive project, but I think I want to listen to each of the individual songs on Flower Boy more than I would want to listen to Loveless. I listen to Loveless only as its whole project, whereas Flower Boy, I feel like when you listen to it as a whole, it's great, but even when you listen to it in its individual songs, you can pick out the ones that are your favorite, and even all of them I think are pretty perfect songs. So we're going with Flower Boy. Right, now we got Songs in the Key of Life versus My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. We've been here. I've talked about how I don't have that much of an opinion on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I think it's great. I love the samples. I mean, obviously, that's not even a take. But Stevie is just a great writer, and the composition of all these tracks is insane, and I think it's perfect. I think it's a perfect long ass album, and it's going to take it here. Now it's OK Computer versus I Didn't Mean to Haunt You. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one. I think OK Computer is pretty close to perfect, and I Didn't Mean to Haunt You, while I love it in its idea, I don't think it's that close to perfect. I don't know. We're taking OK Computer, sure. I don't want to do this. It's To Pimp a Butterfly versus Twin Fantasy. I think this bracket I'm doing about what's my both kind of favorite and best. I don't know. I think there's a big difference between the two terms, and I didn't really define that before I started doing this. I'm kind of just sitting here rambling, and it doesn't mean much. Take all of my takes with a grain of salt, because I don't know what I'm saying. I just listen to a lot of music, and I like to talk about it, and that's what I'm doing right now. With that being said, one of these carried me through high school, and that one is Twin Fantasy. And all right, this is my formal apology. I'm so sorry to Kendrick, and I'm so sorry to Pimp a Butterfly. This is a diabolical matchup to have on the left half. It was bound to happen. I was bound to pick Twin Fantasy. Oh my god. What am I supposed to do here? I love both of these albums to death. I think they're they're perfect in my heart. I don't know if they're like objectively perfect. I don't really rate music like that. It's like based on vibes and whatever, and that's kind of what I'm doing this whole time. I think for this one we're gonna have to dive into objectivity, which I haven't really been doing this whole time. I'm just kind of like clicking buttons and talking. There's something so like creative and just it's like a buzz that I get every time I listen to Hypochondriac. It just like fills my veins and it's incredible. Whereas Nurture is like kind of a life-saving album in a lot of ways, but Nurture I think does that in a more polished way. I know Hypochondriac is, you know, seen as a little bit corny in some of its bars and stuff, and I mean I can see where a lot of people are coming from that. I choose not to engage because I love that album to death, obviously. I'm saying a whole lot of nothing right now, and all that just goes to say that I want Nurture to move on because I think it's more overarchingly better in that way. Goodbye Break-Ins, you had a good run. You took out a lot of albums that I think deserve to have a chance. Oh my, this whole half is stacked. I like Flower Boy just cause vibes. I think it perfectly executes the vibes. Whereas Blonde goes a little bit deeper. Flower Boy, you had a really good run. I love you, but it's Blonde. All right, we have Songs in the Key of Life versus OK Computer. I have said that I think both of these albums are kind of perfect. I'm going to say that I think Songs in the Key of Life deserves to move on. I think it's more objectively better. And while I've spent a lot more time with OK Computer, I don't really know how to explain this one, but I'm choosing Stevie. All right, another round means even more devastating matchups. So now we have Twin Fantasy versus Nurture. I think these two both do a similar thing thematically for me, but Twin Fantasy has been with me longer. It's been with me through a lot more, and Nurture was only like a recent discovery. I loved Porter as a kid. I listened to World whenever it came out, and I like kind of forgot about him for a while because I moved out of that sort of EDM whatever era, but I rediscovered this album this year actually, and it stuck with me. But Twin Fantasy I discovered when I was like 14-15 years old, and it's stayed with me for this long, and so I'm going to go with Twin Fantasy here. All right, Blonde versus Songs in the Key of Life. It's a crazy matchup, but I think I'm still going with Blonde. It's hard to explain why I have such a connection to it. I feel like Blonde has been with me even before I knew that much about Frank Ocean. Like, I don't know, I was obsessed with Self-Control. I heard so many covers of it when I was like a kid. I didn't know who Frank Ocean was, but I knew how great of a writer he was. Blonde is moving on in this round. This is like the matchup. I think this left side was crazy stacked, and I'm really upset about it. I think this is another one that we settle with objectivity, and I think that Blonde is objectively a better album because I love Twin Fantasy Mirror to Mirror because of like how shitty it sounds, and I think that connects to my perception of the songs, whereas Blonde, it's so well recorded. I've had moments where I've just like laid in bed like blasting this and just like appreciating every little detail of the panning and just the production and recording of these songs, that I think Blonde wins this one. Starting on the right side, we have Good Kid Mad City by Kendrick Lamar versus Death Race for Love by Juice WRLD. I can understand why Death Race for Love is on here, but also at the same time, it's not getting anywhere. I'm so sorry, Juice WRLD. There's some good songs on here, but I don't think there's no way it's beating Good Kid Mad City. It's not my favorite Kendrick album, but it still like comes close to a perfect album, whereas Death Race for Love, I don't think I fully get. I wasn't there for it. If I had, and I had maybe established that emotional connection to Juice WRLD and to this album, I might have appreciated it a little bit more. But Good Kid Mad City takes it here. Let's move on. We've got Triple X by Danny Brown versus Die Lit by Playboi Carti. I feel really bad for this because I love Danny Brown. He's one of my favorite rappers, but I don't love Triple X that much. It doesn't do it for me. I truly don't know why Atrocity Exhibition is not on this list. Whereas Die Lit, I personally like more than Whole Lotta Red. I think it's more fun. It's more like holds itself to a little bit of a less serious standard, and I don't know. There's a lot it has to offer, so we're going with Die Lit here. Now we got The Life of Pablo by Kanye West versus Melodrama by Lorde. We're getting into another hot take. I don't really like Melodrama that much. It's no pure heroin. I was about to say I might take Solar Power over Melodrama. That's not the case. I love Lorde as a musician, as a person, whereas Life of Pablo, weirdly, it's up there for me on Kanye albums. It has a lot of cool concepts, and I think it's very polished and cohesive. I'm taking Life of Pablo here. Sorry, Lorde. Next up is Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers versus Plastic Beach by Gorillaz. I got into Phoebe right when this album came out, and it's pretty special. Whereas Plastic Beach, I had a lot of friends who love Gorillaz, and I feel like I experienced them from the sidelines but never really got into them. So this album, it's not really for me. Punisher isn't even my favorite Phoebe album. If you know me, You know how much I love Stranger in the Alps. Punisher comes close. It's not perfect, but I think it's better than Plastic Beach in this case. We've got Astro World by Travis Scott versus Ice Dancer by Blade. I remember Riley said he's taken the shiny dolphin from Grandma. I feel like I might have to agree because I think Astro World is cool. I like it as a costume, but it's not Ice Dancer. I'm at the point where I'm brain dead enough to choose Blade over Travis Scott, so that's what we're gonna do. Now we've got Ants from Up There by Black Country New Road versus Folklore by Taylor Swift. I heard all the hype about this album as it was coming out, Ants from Up There that is, but I didn't listen to it until recently, and so I appreciate its merit and all the things it's doing and its like writing, and I know it is like devastating in some ways, whereas Folklore, this is my favorite album of hers because I think it does move into that genre that is more appealing to me. A lot of songs that I have gone back to, but I don't remember half of this track list. Ants from Up There does a lot more special things that I want it to move on, so we're gonna go with that. Now we got Some Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt versus 1999 by Joey Badass. I know I need to give this Earl album a second chance, but I don't love it that much. It's like very much at the bottom of the ranking of all these albums for me. 1999 I had a great experience with. I listened to it on a plane and I was like, yeah, I fucked with this. So I think both of these I need to spend a lot more time with because I kind of like had my first listen and I didn't think about them until this very moment. But in terms of these, which one I remember liking more, I'm going to go with 1999. Alright, now we got Swimming by Mac Miller versus From Me to You by Quadeca. I understand why From Me to You is here. It's a good album. It's not a great album. It's the start of Quadeca as a producer and as an artist, and you know, him moving into that more serious tone that he then gets into with Haunt You. It's not the best, whereas Swimming is the best of Mac Miller in my opinion. So emotional, and I did connect with it a lot. It does a lot for me in terms of its production, in terms of its writing. I think I love Mac Miller as just like a writer and a rapper. He has a way with how he talks about these topics in his songs, and I think that Swimming takes it here. Our next matchup is Igor by Tyler the Creator versus House of Balloons by The Weeknd. These are both really great, but they're not my favorite from either artist. I think the Igor I love as a concept album. I think House of Balloons kind of has a similar vibe in my opinion, where I appreciate it a lot, but it doesn't impact me that personally. Whereas some songs on Igor do. I've had a lot of those songs on loop. I think it does take it here because House of Balloons is great, but I can take or leave it as an album. Oh, this is an exciting one. We have Frailty by Jane Remover versus Taboo by Denzel Curry. I love Jane Remover. Last summer, I remember I was getting into my big hyperpop era, and I was listening to this album every night and every day and all the time. Taboo was a new listen for me just recently, and I loved it. I think all of these beats suit him super well, and I don't know, I like his presence and his energy as a rapper, and I think he does a really great job with that. But with that being said, it's no Frailty. It's such a world. It creates a world for you. And I think Jane really has a talent for doing that because plugging another one of my favorite albums of all time, please go listen to Census Designated by Jane Remover. I think it's so underrated, and I know it wasn't received super well, but I love it, and I think it's a perfect album, even better than Frailty. But with that being said, I love Frailty, and we're going to take it here. This matchup, we have Damn by Kendrick Lamar versus The Glow Part 2 by The Microphones. Damn, I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did, and I loved it. It's right there behind To Pimp a Butterfly for me. It's also very well executed. I love the beats, I love the features, but The Glow is another one from my high school era. It's a fun one to listen to front to back. I would only really listen to I Want the Wind to Blow on its own. I think it holds up more as a cohesive project, as a experience, but Damn, it does both. It's an experience, and you can also take the individual tracks and listen to it that way. So we're taking Damn here. This matchup, we have The College Dropout by Kanye West versus Currents by Tame Impala. I think this is a pretty easy one for me because I don't love The College Dropout. I think I can recognize why other people might like it, but it's not for me. Whereas Currents is definitely for me because this was one of the first albums I fell in love with. I think when I was 14, getting into being a huge music person for the first time, and I would listen to this and I was like, oh my god, this is peak music. And it's not even my favorite Tame Impala album, but I like Tame Impala a lot. I don't mean to be that guy once again, but he's just that good. Yeah, we're taking Currents here. Alright, now it's time for Yeezus by Kanye West versus Call Me If You Get Lost by Tyler the Creator. Call Me If You Get Lost is, I think, my least favorite of this modern era of Tyler albums. It doesn't really do it for me. Put it up against Flower Boy and Igor and even Chromacopia now. It's Whereas Yeezus is is close to the top of my favorite Kanye albums. Yeah, in terms of this matchup, I think we're taking Yeezus here. Now it's Circles by Mac Miller versus Grace by Jeff Buckley. Circles does a good job of honoring Mac Miller, but Grace by Jeff Buckley is another one that's like, we've been through a lot together. That's gang. Me and Grace by Jeff Buckley, we're besties. No, really no words to describe that, but it has Lover You Should Have Come Over, and it has like the best Hallelujah cover of all time. We're taking Grace. Okay, this is a fun one. We have Because of the Internet by Childish Gambino, and we have LP by JPEG Mafia. Both of these albums I love. I didn't realize how much I love Because of the Internet, and I know it's like, I didn't realize how much a lot of people didn't love that album. There's a lot of storytelling going on to it, and I love that aspect of it, whereas LP is my favorite JPEG Mafia album, and I love JPEG Mafia a lot. Yeah, it's so good, and with that, I'm going to take LP here. This is the last original matchup, and it is In Rainbows by Radiohead versus Illmatic by Nas. So this is where we were foreshadowing this is my favorite Radiohead album. It's such a basic pick, but it's such a basic pick, and it's for a good reason. It's so good. It's In Rainbows by Radiohead. What are we talking about here? And Illmatic, I love. I think it's so impressive that the age that he made this. I recognize Illmatic, but it's against In Rainbows, and I'm going to choose In Rainbows. All right, we're getting into the rest of the matchups on this half. So now we have Good Kid, Mad City versus Die Lit. While I do like Die Lit, I guess it's my favorite Cardi album. I don't know. In terms of which one I like more as a project and which one I think has more grandiose in a sense, I'm choosing Good Kid, Mad City. This is a crazy matchup. We have The Life of Pablo versus Punisher. I think pretty easily I'm going with Punisher just because I like The Life of Pablo a lot, but one of these albums has Graceland 2 and one of them does not. And I think on terms of that scale, I'm going to pick the album that does have Graceland 2. So Punisher, you are moving on. Jesus Christ. This is a jump scare. It's Ice Dancer versus Ants From Up There. God, I hate to do it. I think in terms of albums I've spent more time with and I love more. I mean, I hate to say it, but I love Ice Dancer more than I love Ants From Up There. Let's just move on. Let's just pick Ice Dancer and be done with it. All right, now we have 1999 versus Swimming. While I do appreciate 1999 and I like it a lot, it's not Swimming. I think that I enjoy Swimming as a whole more in terms of its themes. I mean, it's Mac Miller, and this is his best album. I like it a lot, so I'm going to choose it. Igor versus Frailty. Both of these albums, they're not my favorite from the artist, but I think they're the most popular. I don't know, Frailty doesn't do it for me as much as it did in the past, whereas Igor, it still stands up to the test of time for me. We're going with Igor. Next matchup is Damn versus Currents. I think I'm leaning towards Currents. It is like a coming of age album in that aspect, in both like in terms of the way it's influenced my life. Damn is more of a moment in history, whereas Currents has like grown and evolved with me. I listen to it now and I'm still connecting to it in new ways, whereas I listen to Damn and I'm visualizing like 2016. With that being said, I think I'm taking Currents here. Oh my god. It's Yeezus versus Grace. On one hand, I think that Jeff Buckley is a musician that deserves to be honored for a very long time, and I mean, of course he is. This album, a lot of people talk about it, a lot of people love it. But Yeezus is so much fun. I don't have much more explanation. We're going with Yeezus here. Now it's LP versus In Rainbows. The like shitty incel music nerd person in me. Because of that, these are two of my favorite artists, my favorite projects from each of them. And this is a hard matchup, but it's not really because, I don't know, I think In Rainbows has a lot more tracks that hold up on their own, whereas LP, I only listened to a few tracks. Yeah, it's In Rainbows for me. We'll take that. Next round of matchups, we have Good Kid, Mad City versus Punisher. This is hard because neither of these I really like want to argue for that much, because I think that both of these artists have like significantly better albums. I was gonna do the question of like which album would I be okay getting rid of and which one do I want to live with for the rest of my life. I feel like emotionally I want to say Punisher, but I don't know, my heart says Good Kid, Mad City. I love Phoebe Bridgers. She's one of my favorite artists of all time. I honestly would say that I like her as an artist more than I like Kendrick, which is crazy of me. But even with that, I think I'm going to take Good Kid, Mad City here. Every time I look at here and I see Ice Dancer, I'm like, how did this make it? But I love Blade. I started the video talking about how he's the background for this photo with Riley. So whatever, y'all knew. With this matchup, we have Ice Dancer versus Swimming. I think I'm okay with letting Ice Dancer go here because Swimming is that important of an album. It's awesome. So we're gonna go with Swimming here. Igor versus Currents. I want to take Currents here. Can't really explain why, but I think I've been talking about it how Igor is not my favorite Tyler album. I like it as a concept and as an idea, and I think it executes that super well. But Currents, it's a sneaky little pick for me because I didn't realize how much I loved it until I'm like sitting here talking about all this. Yeah, we're gonna go with Currents. Next up, Yeezus versus In Rainbows. I feel like I'm gonna upset people by knocking out either of them. With that being said, which album would I want to listen to for the rest of my life? I think on that question, the obvious answer is In Rainbows because I gotta have a Radiohead album somewhere, and it's this one. All right, Good Kid, Mad City versus Swimming. I've been harping on this idea for a long time, but I think I gotta let Good Kid, Mad City go because, I mean, on this bracket, it's my least favorite Kendrick album, but Swimming is my favorite Mac album, and yeah, we'll take that. And now, Currents versus In Rainbows. I feel like it's clear. I think In Rainbows is a genuinely perfect album for me, and Currents is not, even though it has emotional history with me, but In Rainbows does as well. I remember hearing this for the first time when I was in high school and just being wowed, and I feel like every time I listen to it, I get back to that feeling, and that's why In Rainbows is awesome. Last matchup of this half, we got Swimming by Mac Miller versus In Rainbows by Radiohead. I love Radiohead. I'm sorry, but I'm not really that sorry. I feel like when I heard this album for the first time, it kind of changed my whole perception of music. So yeah, we're taking In Rainbows. And now, the long-awaited final matchup. These are two albums that I hold very near and dear to my heart. We have Blonde by Frank Ocean versus In Rainbows by Radiohead. At this point in the final matchup, I think I have to decide this based on if I could only listen to one album for the rest of my life, which one of these would I want it to be? And I'm sitting here asking myself that question, and I think there's a pretty obvious answer. I think one of these albums is a lot more versatile. It's super meaningful. I mean, both of these obviously have them, but which one has it more, in my opinion? It's Blonde. I think that Blonde is the best album out of this bracket. So this is my final bracket. This is my final pick. I think that Blonde is the best album on this Hivemind fans' favorite albums of all time bracket. Yeah, let me know how bad of a take that is, or if you agree with it. And if you don't think that Blonde is the best album on this bracket, let me know which one you think is the best. If you enjoyed sitting here listening to me talk about all this, leave a like, leave a subscribe. Yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you if you made it to the end of the video. You are awesome. You're an OG. You're super cool. And yeah, thanks for watching. That's it for me.